Yesterday, aviation carried out strikes on the crossing in the south of our country. Today, it's July 12th, and the traditional military update with military expert Roman Svitan. Who is the first time on this YouTube channel? Please subscribe, give likes, comment. Your comments, suggestions, and questions are welcome. We value your feedback. By all means, share our daily work and press the bell to receive daily notifications on the latest military update with Roman Svitan. Roman, we just watched how the aviation carried out strikes in the south of our country. It's reported that it was GBU-62 bombs, and they targeted the south, hitting the crossing near the settlement of Vasilivka, precisely where the Russians are trying to advance. It's a former checkpoint. Any advancing army consumes 5 to 7, sometimes 10 times as much ammunition on the offensive as it does on the defense. Different positions, different odds, roughly like this. Naturally, all these military munitions go through logistic chains. They are sometimes 500 kilometers at least. In terms of Russia, there are sometimes up to 2,500 kilometers from the Urals. It is very important for us to interrupt just these logistical chains at the combat radius of the means of defeat that we reach, at least. There's, let's say, one of the variants of GBU-62. It's the same JDAM, so-called. This is a 250-kilogram aerial bomb free-falling with a Dodger, with system of planning correction, which makes it possible to accurately in 1 to 2 m. It can be seen well on the crossing. There is 1.52 millimeter maximum deviation from the center to go out and strike, in this case on the crossing. Enemy logistics being taken out, the more we are comfortable working from the right bank. Why Vasilivka is convenient, let's say. The left bank is almost all our aviation can be pushed to a depth of around 50-70 kilometers. They drop the aviation bomb and it glides for a certain distance. Goes out, performs a combat mission, and the pilots go behind the high bank, that is, go down to extremely low altitudes under the radio horizon, which gives the opportunity to work almost safely even GBU, approaching and closer to the front line. I think there's going to be an increase in this kind of action of ours, especially after the major promised planes come up. Friends, let's continue the gathering. The best thing we can do is take revenge on the enemy. What are we collecting for? It's for the 93rd Brigade, Holodny Yar, a legendary elite brigade. We need to collect for 2 interactive control desks for the command post in Donetsk region and a powerful radio-electronic warfare system. The collection is urgent. The conditions? For a donation of 1,000 hryvnias or multiples of this amount, you have a chance to win a Javelin speaker. Soon, I will show it to you. You will see what it looks like. Also, whoever donates the closest amount to the number of occupiers destroyed on the day when the collection ends will receive a flag and a book from this brigade. Let's do it. Everyone contribute what they can. It's Saturday, skip a coffee or a croissant today, and let's make sure our defenders, our heroes on one of the toughest fronts, get the essential things they need to fight and destroy. Roman also, this is the Telegram community, Sunflower. They are directly connected to the Ukrainian aviation and say that these strikes have become more frequent because our defenders are doing a great job, especially targeting the enemy's air defense in the south. They say that a significant number of BUK systems have been destroyed, which were supposed to threaten and prevent our aviation from operating. On the left bank, our special services are working very well. The main intelligence directorate and the security service of Ukraine. They have certain units specifically focused on destroying the enemy's air defense. There's a window of opportunity that lasts for a few hours or a few days until it's restored. Work-already bombers or fighters multi-role under the task of dropping bombs. GBU-62, GBU-39. In order to drop it, the pilot must climb above the radio horizon. That is, to get into the kill zone practically. They are in it for a few seconds, sometimes a minute and a half or 2 minutes, but nevertheless it is better in this sense to destroy the Russian air defense in order to make the flight crew more secure. And now such complex work is being carried out on the left bank, on Zaporizhzhya and Kherson directions. Once again, the special services have shown themselves very well. They still have special units that have long-range means of reconnaissance and defeat. That is, they have operational drones that can go as far as 150 kilometers, almost to the Azov coast. The main thing is to scale this production and allow intelligence services to destroy enemy air defense before an airstrike. Roman, also yesterday in the Orenburg region, Orsk, we saw a factory burning very well, a factory that produces artillery shell casings for the Russian Federation. At the moment, it is not known what caused the fire, but as you say, it may have been some indifferent person. Definitely not indifferent, because there is information that there was an artificial fire in one of the paint shops. So it was a specific arson. Are not indifferent people, especially it is such a double blow, I would say so. The first is the destruction of a military facility. It is very important for us to destroy this chain and the military production chain, to tear it up somewhere. Roman, apart from this, I think it is also the hideout in Orsky. Bloomberg reports that Ukraine has blown up an important Russian gas pipeline in western Siberia. It's about a gas pipeline located in the Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Region, which had a capacity of 2.6 billion cubic meters of gas per year. Also a double strike. It's most likely the work of our scouts. Either the confidants of our intelligence or directly our groups. And most likely it's the main intelligence directorate. A double task was being accomplished. The first was to destroy the gas pipeline. First of all, this is the Russian oil and gas industry. It's a defeat for the economy, among other things, plus this pipeline fed several military facilities. It is very important for us to de-energize or ensure that they are stopped, at least on the gas side. And the second effect of Khanty-Mansi, this is Orban's homeland. Hungarians are part of the Khanty-Mansiysk people. 1,000 years ago, they passed through Ukraine from the Urals to Pannonia and settled there. By the way, they did not pay for trampling on Ukrainian land, so you can count it against Orban, that he went from east to west first. The entire GDP of Hungary would be owed with interest, probably. Our main intelligence directorate made it clear that if he tries to interfere with Ukraine, he might end up back in Khanty-Mansiysk. It's really not as comfortable there as Hungary is at the moment. But nevertheless, it is sacred for Russians. These are Russian natives. So he can head towards the light, at least the one that the main intelligence directorate has provided for him now. Roman, in the Zaporizhzhya region, the collaborators' occupiers are complaining a lot because they say there was a serious strike in the settlement of Olanivka. They hit a high-rise building. The occupiers claim that it was residential development, but Olanivka is used by the Russians as a hub for military personnel, and we also know that Olanivka used to house, or still houses, a prison where our prisoners of war were, or possibly still are, held. Olanivka is not deep, but it's already at the level of an army rear, meaning the Russians have advanced westward by several dozen kilometers, and now Olanivka is being used. It is on the highway from Donetsk to Mariupol, and the railroad passes there, and the highway passes. So, as a military hub, the Russians are using it now at such a deep rear, I would say. Naturally, there is a large amount of, first of all, equipment, ammunition, and several headquarters there which our forces have now hit. It is most likely to be a HIMARS strike. That is, based on the destruction, the accuracy of the combat mission, the range to the line of contact, it is most likely to be a HIMARS strike. We have a sufficient number now. Recently, deliveries of M30 and M31 missiles have been made. Range 86 kilometers, you can reach Olanka. Roman, also, if we talk about the lines of combat engagement, I read, you could say their official channels, including those of the airborne forces. It's part of my job to read their Z-War correspondence. They say they have very serious problems in the north, specifically on the Sumy direction. What are they saying? They say that Kindrativka, which we talked about, yes, now we will show it on the map in the Sumy direction. They have a problem because on the western flank, their forces are encircled. Here, Kindrativka is located, and they are in trouble because instead of withdrawing from Kindrativka, which is actually surrounded due to the defense forces advancing from this flank, they are, on the contrary, sending small groups of reinforcements into Kindrativka, which is leading to even more losses there. The Russians have never spared manpower. They have enough resources, and including mobilization, if such a decision is made. Sufficient resources for the moment and finance. Petrodollars flowing after Israel started a war in the Middle East against Iran. That is, they don't feel any problems in this resource, so they throw them at certain tasks. And we have already praised our operational level commanders several times, who are working in the Kursk direction very competently carrying out the combat task of squeezing out the Russians. They are undercutting, coming from the rear, strikes on Elgov, on Rilsk, on Glushkovo, on Koronivo, strikes near Teotkino. That is, these are the rear structures of this Russian incursion into our territory. And they are the ones who, when these strikes are carried out, create big problems for the Russians in logistics and a one-way ticket. The only problem is that there are quite a few of them, at least it's a matter of time. And when they run out in this direction, it is not for nothing that Lavrov is now in North Korea, asking for North Korean soldiers to be sent, say, to the Kursk direction, to cover at least the direction to Moscow. That is, the capital of Russia will be defended by North Korean troops. At least that's what it looks like now, or is being prepared for, so that's for sure. In the near future, we will hear just an increase in this direction in a sufficiently large number of North Koreans. They have already set up a rookery somewhere deep in the rear. They will increase. We have a window of opportunity while this armada is coming in, maybe 15,000, 20,000. Lavrov will make a deal, pull the North Koreans up near Kursk. As long as we have this time, maybe a few weeks, a month and a half, we'll squeeze the Russian troops from the Sumy direction, creating a stable front for defense, at least what they did not do in January this year. But now we have to do it post facto. But nevertheless, first of all, the teamwork and operational work in this area is being carried out. There is a good team of military specialists there. Roman, by the way, about the transfer of military personnel and equipment from North Korea. Why is this being done? Russia can't manage on its own anymore, or is the Kremlin afraid to take bigger mobilization steps and increase military-industrial production? Do they want to demonstrate that they have some kind of support from other countries, even such as North Korea? No, it's just cheaper. North Korean soldiers cost twice as much as recruiting their own. That's it. It's simple economics. That is, at this point, Putin has already started counting money, knowing full well that there may be serious sanctions ahead, let's say. Or maybe in the end, our Malyuk, Budanov, and Syrsky, our Holy Trinity, will arrest those women who whispered to them not to hit the Russian oil industry. And if Malyuk and Budanov's sanctions continue, Russia will lose its finances, and now Putin will count them. Nabiulina whispered in his ear 100% that all is not well in the Russian economy. Because they will count money naturally, it is profitable to buy consumable material somewhere cheaper. It is still expendable by and large, And this mechanism of pulling North Korean soldiers to the Kursk direction, to the Belgorod direction, it is unlikely that Koreans will go into the occupied territory of Ukraine. Unlikely. Possible, sure, but based on certain geopolitical points, unlikely. But on the Russian territory, I mean, they're on the Kursk direction, on the Belgorod direction. They can deploy, perform certain not so offensive but defensive tasks, having freed the Russians. About 120,000 deployed on the Kursk and Belgorod direction on the front width of 300, 400 kilometers. So they can just replace them, rotate them out. This 100 will go east. We should be preparing for that, by the way. It's probably for the second wave. We were talking August, September, and in their place will be North Korean soldiers in a defensive posture. I think so, because at the moment there are no offensive numbers of troops to organize any offensive. It would take 150 to 200,000. It is unlikely that the North Koreans will give a third of their army to the Russians. But they can give a tenth of their army. Roman, just a small correction. You taught me the correct name for the head of the Central Bank of Russia. Nabiulina is correct. In Germany, Mr. Roman, they announced the following. By July, Ukraine will have its first long-range, as I understand it, cruise missiles, which were agreed upon in May. And in May, when Volodymyr Zelensky visited Berlin and met with Friedrich Merz, they agreed on the production, as I recall, you reported, of long-range missiles with a range of 2,500 kilometers. It just so happens that for the last 3 years, before Merz, Europe is practically covered with Biden's snot. I was talking about him, why he covered the whole of Europe with a 2-meter layer of this democratic American snot. It couldn't move in that snot. It was like she was in jello. And Europe couldn't help us because of this. This is because, on one hand, Biden was trying to support the combat actions, but only in a way that wouldn't, God forbid, provoke the Russians, wouldn't cause them to break apart, wouldn't make the Russian army run, wouldn't lead to the collapse of Russia, and so on and so forth, and he didn't allow Europe to do this. That's why we needed Trump. And once again, I'll repeat, yes, he's a clown. Yes, he brought along a team of Israeli market vendors. But still, why did we need Trump? For him to clean up this Biden snot with Europe. Finally, Europe has begun to make its own security decision. This is what happened. Only a miracle like Trump could have done it. A miracle in quotes, of course. And practically the first swallow in the awakening Europe is not Macron or Starmer, it's Merz, it's Germany, which can afford, based on its economic capabilities, based on its technical capabilities, it can afford to cover Europe on the distant approaches, now at the moment on the Ukrainian-Russian front. And that's exactly what's happening. And the speed, that is the intensity of decision-making and participation. And the Germans, they may be like the Russians sometimes, they take a long time to harness, but then they go fast. Why did they take so long? They calculate everything. Start all the processes, and then there is an avalanche of accumulation and supply of some actions and munitions, equipment, and so on. It's starting to happen now. For 6 months or so, they've been counting on it. Merz stepped in. He was ready to get involved. Again, Trump helped. That is to say, he spurred them on with his, you might say, recklessness towards the Europeans. You can even say that. So he spurred Germany to make a decision. This is very important for us. Once again, not Britain, not France, but Germany is a very serious ally for us at the moment, which we need to orient ourselves towards, and which will definitely help us by helping itself. They also calculate all this perfectly well. The best option is to keep this Russian-Chinese horde on the distant approaches, so they will definitely help us. And believe me, the German armament, it's going to be one of the best sellers, I would say so, on our front. We've already tried all this, even if not in large volumes, Gepards, Leopards, so we already have a lot of German equipment. The IRIS-T systems have shown themselves to be very effective. And all this will develop. Now we are developing cooperation on drones, on various drone programs with Germany. That is why both Merz and Germany will soon become, I predict as a military analyst, the main pillar around which Europe's defense capabilities will be focused and unfolded. That's why Germany for us at the moment now, you might say, is the benchmark in relations not even of the United States, let alone France and Britain. Britain has always followed the United States' lead. France, they have their own way. It's good that they are in that sense, but they still have their own kind of task, sometimes more political than technical. And Germany, they can do the whole range of tasks. They're already starting to accomplish that. One of these swallows is that we will have long-range missiles by the end of this month. Believe me, it will probably, I think so, it will be Taurus under the Terrace logo, which will be large unit assembled at our place. By the way, Roman, recently, 2 days ago, Merz said that he wanted Germany to become the leading country in NATO. It is meant in the context of Ukraine and Europe. It is, and that's what I'm talking about. That is both the understanding of it and the request. There is a demand for a certain kind of leadership in Europe. The British, especially after they left the European Union, they lost a certain amount of that leadership in Europe. The French, after all, are more focused on their own issues, so it's more of an expat state rather than an empathetic one, I would say. At this stage, at least, the thing that can unite the whole of Europe and lead to certain milestones is only Germany at the moment. Once again, it has these capabilities, economic, technological, different levels. That is geopolitical scales. Spain is reoriented towards them. Italy is reoriented towards them. So it's not a problem at all. There are questions on France, on Britain. Poland is unambiguous, so that is enough for us. We need to build a great relationship with the Poles. Now there is some friction, again related to the Volyn tragedy in its time. It is necessary to find a common language with Poles, to apologize to each other for this tragedy, because there were provocations on both sides, to solve all these issues and further with Poles and with Germans, because Germany is through Poland. Such a basic union should be launched. Now a good, again, Polish-Ukrainian-Lithuanian initiative continues, that is, all these topics continue. That's where you can pull in this initiative, pull in Germany. And that backbone is going to be pretty serious. That is why our European prospects are good at the moment, both defensive and offensive, among other things. All the more, Germany has a hope for the so-called revenge, I say, for military revenge, among other things. And this should be used. That is, first of all, the Germans themselves will rise up. That is, they will get out of this problem of the post-fascist, so-called. And secondly, we'll feel empowered and feel the need for them right now. That's good. And we're going to heat it up some more. Roman, there is also information that Ukraine and Britain have signed an agreement for which we will receive 5,000 Thales missiles. This is a missile, 70 mm, and it's intended for shooting down drones, or what? In total, there are 5,000 such missiles. Is that a lot? It's a question of what kind of missiles? The fact is that the missile itself is an air-to-ground or ground-to-ground missile. There are certain guidance mechanisms. It all depends on the guidance of this missile. The main guidance mechanism is passive laser. It is necessary to illuminate the target with a laser pointer, and the missile follows the laser beam. A sufficient number of them produced. There are a lot of them produced in the world. They have been produced for several decades. In principle, they can be used to shoot down drones as well. Although realistically it is an anti-tank missile, but it was originally produced. The main purpose is to work from helicopters on tanks. Again, with laser guidance. Although there are a lot of different homing heads, including an infrared one. There are many mechanisms. Which ones will be handed over to us? We'll know after they hand it over. But in any role, this missile is the best. It has shown itself very well. It can launch from any practically, and we have a lot of already 70mm launchers of different caliber, and helicopter and airplane and ground, that is by and large, 5. That is, several thousand missiles would be good to get. It is even better to start producing them at home. On the basis of this missile, it is possible to make a good anti-drone missile with a thermal homing head. And equip mobile teams with it. I mean, you could. I think this process will be set in motion. Those people who are knowledgeable in these matters, they will suggest at least which way to move these missiles. You mentioned shooting down drones. Today's night in Ukraine was also not quiet. It flew to many regions, including Lutsk, Lviv, and other cities. Some were hit, some not so much. Overall, what do you think, this massive use of drones by the Russians? Is it a sign of weakness? Is it evidence that they just want to terrorize and cause destruction in Ukraine? And most importantly, do you have any idea how to counter mass drone attacks from the side of terrorists? This is at least a planned combat operation. And here I have heard, and a lot of questions are asked, that this is sort of a manifestation of weakness on the part of the Russians. What weakness? On the contrary, this is real planned combat work, systematic combat work by Russian long-range weapons. And it's only going to get bigger. Once again, I've been saying it for a year, it's only now that it's clear. These are not Shaheds flying to us. These are not Iranian Shaheds. And the fact that the Israelis have smashed up the factories producing Shaheds has nothing to do with the Iranians. This is a Russian-Chinese machine that will only increase in production. So even if you bomb all of Iran, it's still these Iranians are flying and will continue to fly. They are being improved by the Chinese. New engines are being put there, already jet engines, including. They get to Lviv without any problems by and large. That is, this process of combat work will only intensify for the Russians. This is not a weakness, it is the opposite. It is a technological opportunity with the help of the Chinese to strengthen this genocidal moment. Basically, this kind of munitions, they basically fulfill the purpose of nightmare the population. Why? Because military production, you won't seriously defeat Geran with drones. It's the missiles that are needed. Let's say that it is also impossible to disable some of our defenses with Geran because there are serious air defense facilities there. They simply won't let Geran get close to them. So Geran will be used on civilians, on infrastructure, on supply chains. That is, why can drones be used? If we had refineries, that's how they would hit the refineries. It's just that the Russians took out almost all of our refineries the first year, and we still haven't gotten any of them almost completely to zero. How to counter this? When there were fewer of them, when they were really Shaheds, when the Iranians delivered the first hundreds of these Shahed drones, there were only tens of them. They could be shot down, it wasn't a big problem. At least, a low-speed, low-maneuvering, low-flying target is, in fact, the best target for an air defense system, not to mention, for example, aviation. And when there's a lot going on, you have to change the whole system. Why have we been talking about this all year? That, for one thing, they are not Shaheds, but Chinese Sunflower 200 or Russian Geran. There's going to be a lot of them, which means we have to change the interception system completely. Either we're actual Iranian Shaheds, you could leave it, mobile teams, facility air defense, they could handle a few dozen drones. And when there are hundreds going in, and there will be up to 1,000 at least going in there once a week, they will accumulate them. Such a large number should be intercepted on the line of contact, on the front line. They shouldn't cross the front line. They shouldn't. Most of these, first of all, half of them are only strike drones. The other half are just flying boards like Gerbers. Decoys. So their approach altitude is between 2 and 4 kilometers. Why don't they go below 2? They're being shot down now by machine guns. They're going from 2 to 4 kilometers. They do not rise above 4 because the internal combustion engine starts to choke. There is not enough air, and no one will put a compressor on Jiran or Gerbera. This is unrealistic. Therefore, this echelon from 2 to 4 kilometers must be completely closed. How do we close it? We need to redeploy all mobile teams along the battle line. They won't get those heights with machine guns, though they'll knock some of them down. So we need to add anti-aircraft guns, we need to add man-portable surface-to-air missile systems, we need to add short-range SAMs like Raven, and we've been saying for months that we should put R-73 missile launchers on Gazelle. The same short-range SAM only produced at our place it can be produced. Ask the intelligence, they'll tell you how they mounted those R-73s on the backs and took down the helicopters, and then also shot down an M9 and a couple of Su-30s over the Black Sea. So this is the mechanism along the front line. They must not be allowed into our territory. Objective air defenses can't handle hundreds of drones coming in at one point. It's just not possible to do it, and the frontal will cope to a depth of 50 kilometers, this now forming hull depth, hull level, hull 50x50 should cover. That's where they should be integrated into the air defense brigades, into the brigades, and equip them with all kinds of suppression systems. And now the so-called interceptor drones are also appearing. They should be made with jet engines, a turbine should be put there right away. Why? Because the Russians will start next stage. The removal of the internal combustion engine, they will put turbines, and these Garan will be high speed and high altitude. So the interceptors should be turbine powered. It makes no sense to invest in drones or even in engine-driven vehicles for them right now. That is to start specifically with turbine-powered, jet-powered interceptors. This option is possible, and it has already been said inside the country. Everyone knows it very well. Ask any aviator, he'll tell you how it should be done. Inside the country, there's a good topic right now regarding the deployment and establishment of light aircraft. We've been talking about this for a year, too. Since last summer, we've been talking about the need for a Super Tucano. We need an Embraer, a Brazilian level. There are probably a dozen of them. There's probably this kind of attack aircraft or light aircraft, but only with built-in systems, machine guns, and scopes. Pulling up pilots now is just running that process. For a year, the fuse burned. This Israeli government hoped that the Israelis would bomb the Shahed factories in Iran, and the Shaheds would stop flying to us. No one has seen that there is China in production. That's a question for the intelligence. They carried themselves for a year and ended up sleeping through a year of what were not Iranian, but Chinese Garan. Now we have to catch up. It's a possibility. To put light aircraft into service, and they should be assigned an altitude from 1 to 4 kilometers. That's the light engine aviation echelon above 4 kilometers. Fighter jets are working on anything that breaks through there. Cruise missiles or drones with jet propulsion Russian below a kilometer helicopters are working. And on the ground, of course, anti-aircraft missile system, which will remain in the air defense control. That is, medium, short, long range, depending on the importance of the object. The U.S. Senate committee approved the allocation of $500 million for aid to Ukraine. It was $300 million before they increased it to $500. Both the upper and lower houses of Congress need to vote. I understand this is for the USAI system. $500 million isn't much, or can this be considered some sort of step from the U.S. side? They increase only by $200 million. What is the reason? The main thing is, as we say in Ukraine, the ice is broken. That is, it is beginning to move from talk to action. On PDA promised us deliveries there a few hundred million, on USAI deliveries to increase by 200 million. So this process is beginning to gain momentum, and it is very important to us. To repeat once again, it is very important. For Trump to disperse this whole Israeli tinsel around him that he's put together and bring back the state Republicans, the Reaganites. Bolton, Pompeo. Realistically, we should be pushing the idea of Lend-Lease again. The optimal option for us to supply American arms is Lend-Lease. And the real thing we need is Lend-Lease. That's what Pompeo was proposing last year, a $500 billion Lend-Lease that Russia would pay for. We'll pick up all this American hardware worth $500 billion, which is spread across thousands of square kilometers, probably enough for 10 wars like the one we're currently fighting with Russia. So you can take $500 billion worth of this iron, roll up the Russian army with this iron, and then the Russians will pay with reparations. They will pay with gas, fuses, oil. The Americans will find something to take from Russians. They'll take the underwear out of your head, which is kind of not even there. So they are masters in this sense. And in this mode, we need to bring the level of relations with the United States up to the level that Pompeo was talking about. I think there's going to come that time when it comes to Trump that all this Israel tinsel, Witkoff, Levitt, and all this stuff that's dragging him into the Middle East right now, and it's disastrous for him. He'll bring back the statesmen. That's a time we'll talk about later when we bring up Pompeo and Bolton again. Gray. Graham is pushing some very important topics for us right now. And then there's this Lend-Lease thing coming back. It will solve our military issues. The question of personnel and the motivation of Ukrainians to win will remain. Now the authorities have almost completely unmotivated the task of liberating our territory up to the state border. That is, restoring territorial integrity and sovereignty. We need to reverse all these processes. To give Ukrainians back hope, faith, and victory, Cossack faith. I mean, look at the Cossacks. This is how the Ukrainian nation was revived. There must be a Cossack Corps. And here it is unambiguously land and will, i.e., two main tasks. Take back the land and choose the will. That's how we're going to win this war. Again, with the help of the Americans, Europeans, and the main thing is our will to win. We need to roll out all these processes, the sooner the better. The best option is to reset the executive branch. According to our constitution, we have military men who have one of the main tasks prescribed, and they do not forget it in the oath they took to the people of Ukraine. Sovereignty and territorial integrity. This does not concern Budanov and those with him, who are talking nonsense about how our task, apparently, is to stop the combat actions with Russia and give them our territory forever. So it's not the right task. So we need to get those people, those generals, the Ukrainian generals, they're the ones we need to bring in. Thanks to our listeners. We're reading all the comments. We're penciling everybody in, the names that you're giving. And naturally, we will promote this theme of replacing the executive branch with people who are trustworthy. This is now very important to the Ukrainian army, to the Ukrainian society, trust in the executive branch. I'm not talking about the legislative, I'm not talking about the political, it will never recover. We'll re-elect them after the war. But the real thing that we can do now is to replace the cabinet of ministers with the entire vertical of power, according to our constitution. I think we can do it. Roman, thank you for the update. Let me remind the viewers to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as we update the analytics for you every day. Comment on what Colonel has suggested. It's very important to hear from you and know your opinions. Share our conversation, of course, to make more Ukrainians understand what is happening in Ukraine and Russia's war in Ukraine. Click the bell so you receive daily notifications about the latest military update with expert Roman Svitan. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. See you.